I'm Lizzy.
And I'm Izzy, and we need help.
Each week we stumble through a new book, method, or concept that brings us one step closer to being our best self.
Yes, we make fun of ourselves.
And others.
But mostly just ourselves. So here's to not taking self-help quite so seriously.
Welcome to We Need Help. I'm Lizzy.
And I'm Izzy, and I'm super excited to introduce Monica Yearwood today on our show. She's a work and relationship burnout coach, and she's also my high school buddy. We went to high school together.
Welcome, Monica.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here.
It's so awesome to have you here. This is really, really cool. I don't think we've seen each other like physically. I don't think since high school.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
Is anybody else shocked that Izzy went to high school?
Yeah, I don't remember any of it. Yeah, barely. I remember my high school boyfriend, Brian Bateman. That's about it.
Oh yeah, Brian
Bateman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've given you a lot of shit because it wasn't Jason Bateman, which I would have much preferred.
Right. That would have been pretty
nice.
amazing.
He was so nice. You know what? He was really quiet. He was kind of a quieter guy. And I remember, I had the hugest crush on him. So I pretended to like fishing so I could get him. And then every single day we would just go fishing and I'd be like,
this is amazing.
But I learned a lot about fishing.
Right.
More than I wanted to. So,
and it worked.
It did work. I snagged my catch.
The big fish. The big fish.
Shout out to Brian. Brian's, I think, married with like 4 children now. So there you go. Yeah.
Hi, Brian.
It's all good. Monica, who did you date in high school? Who was your...
Brandon Hart.
Brandon, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Brandon. Yeah.
I hope he appreciates me just saying his full name. Actually, he's an amazing artist and woodsman.
Is he really?
Yeah, I mean, super talented. He makes custom furniture. Super talented.
Wonderful.
So, and we still talk every once in a while. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now memories are starting to come back. I did come to the U.S. for a trip because I come every couple years. And I think I went out with him and Errol Ertuck in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And I do remember he was talking about the furniture. So that's cool. So shout out.
Yeah,
and
shout out.
Yeah, we'll post your link somewhere.
That's so awesome.
So back to Monica. Monica is a work and relationship burnout coach. What does that entail exactly? Like, what do you do on a daily basis? Who do you work with? What's your story?
Yeah. So I work with women specifically. And so I talk to women every single day that are recovering from the consequences of work and relationship burnout, caused by toxic patterns, caused by being targeted at times by manipulative personalities and getting themselves out of that. And so I have a 3-month coaching program that helps them to recover from the physical, mental, and emotional consequences of work and relationship burnout and toxic relationships. And then that also educates them on how to become toxic relationship proof, essentially. And then we have a year-long mastermind for women that are graduates of that program. So that's what I do every day. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I went on your Instagram and oh my God, I needed you so badly a year ago.
Yeah.
So badly. I still do. But you are amazing when it comes to just a few things that I notice is you don't mess around. It takes 2 to tango to be in these relationships. And you call that right out on the mat. But the thing that I found interesting is if you're not healed from one of these relationships, you're going to get into another one and do it again, right? Or
it's very likely. It's very likely. Well, yeah. I mean, most of the women that I work with have had this, as a recurring pattern. And these are women that are extremely proficient in their lives. They're intelligent and influential in many ways. And so that it's kind of like a mystery to them because they may have many healthy functioning relationships in their life and it just shows up in their romantic life, or it may just show up in their work life. And they oftentimes think that they've kind of done everything possible to do, and then yet they find themselves in a situation again. And so some of that is, trauma, and how trauma can affect us neurologically, emotionally, psychologically, and not processing trauma, at the time that it occurs, can set off sort of a pattern where, you can orient yourself to the familiarity of the pain of it in a way to sometimes reenact it and find healing and find completion with it, or sometimes because it's just sort of familiar to you in a way. And so that can leave you open to being attracted to certain types of relationships, or, being somebody that is an ideal target for somebody that may have very manipulative tendencies.
So how do you, like when you have, Lizzy, go ahead. You want to say something?
I do, because I want like a free therapy session real quick. Just a quick one. A quick one. So let's just say a certain somebody had a alcoholic mother. Like maybe, let's just say me, for instance. Would I be more likely to fall into toxic relationships with other females?
So I don't know if I could say that you would be more likely to, but I can say that, it's not uncommon in my practice that the large majority of the women that I've worked with have often had a primary parent, or something going on at home. But that's not always the case. Sometimes, you can, I've have some clients, for example, who, they were married and things, were maybe not perfect, but they didn't expect that their husband was going to, full on betray them, whether that, was through cheating or lying. And so then that traumatic incident occurred. And then after that, there was a pattern of relating to men that were, and the relationship just continued to get worse. So I don't know if I can say if it puts you in a position where it's more likely to happen. I can say that the large majority of women that I do work with, it has happened, if that makes sense.
Almost every single kind of stripper I know had daddy issues.
Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with being broad stroke apology to all the strippers. You're fine.
Yeah.
Well, I love strippers and I love people with daddy issues, but I'm just saying it seems like there is a lot. I mean, it's even a joke. It's known that if you have daddy issues, you might be more likely to be looser in a moral way.
I'm just wondering, I truly believe it's mostly mommy issues, because I, have a pretty good relationship with my dad. I have a good relationship with my mom now, but it was tumultuous in the past. And what's interesting is that relationship has affected other relationships. So it's interesting. Do you, Monica, when a client comes to you, do you do the digging in the background, or do you kind of move forward into the solution? How do you work with a client?
Yeah. So the first thing that I do is I do have a free breakthrough session, and so it's at that time that I am doing some digging to see if I can, help to uncover the roots of the toxic relationship patterns, and also to see if, we would be a good match, for working forward. That's obviously very important that, I believe that I can definitely help the person and that we're going to, be able to work together well. And then after that, it's going into the program, and it's absolutely action forward, doing practices every single day, to really move forward and move the needle forward.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you said no to have you said no to people? I'm sorry, I can't work with you. And have you referred them somewhere else? And what are those, can you share a situation like that? I'm curious.
Yeah,
we're just wondering if you would
no.
reject us.
Well, it's not a matter of rejection. It's just a matter of, really trying to get the person the right solution, for them. And I'm not the right fit for everyone, either. So I'm just really trying to identify that. But so reasons why it wouldn't, I probably, of the 10 people that I talk to, I probably invite half of those, in as clients.
Okay.
And so, there really has to be willingness. One of the things that I look for is, there's a tendency for us, just everyone, for us to become very attached to our stories, and the things that have happened.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can really keep us trapped in the story. And so what I'm looking for on the call is the willingness to look at the present, which is really where the truth can be found when it comes to how we're feeling and what it is that we're dealing with and our current challenges. And so sometimes, going into the past is, again, is falling into the throes of the story. So I am looking for, a woman's willingness to do that, because that's going to show me if she really is able, at least in the way that I work, to move forward on something, and to let it go, because I'm looking to actually, help this person solve these problems, and not make it be a continuum in their life, so that's one of the key things that I'm really actually looking for in our talk.
It sounds to me, and we say it all the time, don't we? Is it like, are you willing to get in the driver's seat? Yeah. Or do you want to be the passenger?
Yeah, but people are stuck to their victim stories. Because I also work with women. It's in a little bit of a different capacity, but it's similar. It's addiction. And very often women aren't willing to move forward because I was the victim of my husband's cheating, and that's the story. And I'm like, you gotta be willing, at least willing to let that go. And it's hard. Yes. Because some people aren't willing because it's more comfortable.
I see it a lot in death. People don't want to let go of being sad over death.
Yeah. Yeah. You're coming from Irish.
Irish.
Yeah. Like to earn a place on Lizzy's mom's wall, you have to have died.
My mom has no pictures
of anyone who's alive.
People.
So, Monica, I'm totally curious. Like, how did you get into this line of work? Like, because you had a Ayurvedic center, right? I remember in the Midwest. Yep. And then how did you go from that to what you're doing now?
Yeah. So the people that we worked with there, men and women, we created customized retreats for them. And a lot of times they would come for physical health issues. So gut health issues, digestive issues. And through my training and everything, I was able to create customized programs for them, herbal, dietary, lifestyle practices. And they were doing private retreats with us. So they would stay for 3 days, 5 days, 7 days with us. And in that time, 9 times out of 10, the physical health issues were a manifestation of an emotional or mental or trauma or work burnout, relationship burnout. And so we weren't going to really move the needle on a gut health issue or something happening with their immune system unless they were really willing to address how the emotions and the mind. And it was just really through working through people that it just became more evident and clear that was really the focal point, the root, and the foundation. So a lot of the work at my center became around mental and emotional healing around work and relationship burnout.
Yeah. Have you ever experienced burnout yourself?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. So I've had a burnout experience, both in work and in relationship. And that's not uncommon for those two things to be, related because they're relationships, and how we're functioning in our relationships. If that's, overworking, overgiving, or, not communicating in ways, or, if we're orienting ourselves to feel demeaned in some way in a relationship, or trying to work something out from our past, or whatever that may be, there can be expressions both in work and relationship. Yeah.
That's interesting. And have you ever because Lizzy had a really interesting experience. It was with a female friend that was the toxic partner. So that's interesting to me too. Like it wasn't work, it wasn't romantic necessarily, but it's this other kind of relationship. So.
Yeah, absolutely. It can occur with friends, family.
My situation was she was not only linked to me, but she was linked to my daughter. So, and she just a total textbook covert narcissist.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I realized it is she started doing it to somebody else. I couldn't see her doing it to me. I could only see her doing it to somebody else. And that's when from a young age, I think I started sticking up for people who were weak. That's just kind of like, through like the way I grew up. And because I saw it happening to someone else, I could recognize it, but I couldn't see her doing it to me. It was the weirdest thing.
And so that's the question I have for Monica. Do you sometimes bring, like, do people come to you and they're just not aware of certain things? And do you touch on that? Like, do you try to get them to that awareness, or do you just work with people who are already aware?
Well, I mean, they have to be aware that they're in pain, and they have to be aware that they're in a relationship that is having a really big negative impact on their life. Otherwise they wouldn't be even scheduling, a call with me. So they're aware at least of that much. And then just as far as, maybe what's keeping, every person's situation could be different, but, not aware perhaps that they may, have rescuing tendencies, that's keeping them engaged, or that, this is a very serious, issue, in many ways, especially if it's a woman with primary partners. And, sometimes I think sometimes the biggest mistake that can occur is that people think that, just by ending this relationship, that's all I have to do. Right. But it's like, well, this has actually now happened, not just one time. It's happened 2 or 3 or even more times. And the consequence of it isn't just the loss of a romantic relationship. It's how it's affected your esteem and what you believe you can create in the world. There's been financial consequences. There's been lost nights of sleep. There's been, consuming all that real estate in your mind that you could have been thinking or doing other things, that you were thinking about this thing. And so I think the awareness really is on the true consequence of it. And then also the belief that something else could be possible. So that's the awareness part.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to, I noticed all the physical stuff first, like the brain fog, remember I was like, could I put on 10 pounds? I had never put on 10 pounds like that unless I was pregnant. I couldn't sleep. I've always loved my sleep. Like, things were happening. And so I actually went to a physical doctor and had my blood work done. And then I had my hormones done. And then it wasn't until I realized that my testosterone was low. And then I got to a nutritionist, and that's when she said, you actually have adrenal fatigue. Like this is a physical manifestation of being completely burnout and just tired from this. And I actually even went to therapy, and the therapist, I can't believe I got this wonderful therapist. He was like, "Oh, you have a problem. It's just not you."
Right.
And he was honest with me. But remember, I had these physical issues.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize I was stressed out.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to ask. And thank you for sharing that, Lizzy. What are the physical ramifications of burnout? Like, what happens? What happens to your body? And how long do the effects of that last? Like, how long does it take to recover from that?
Yeah. So, what you shared about the adrenal fatigue, that's not uncommon. And oftentimes it is the physical symptoms that become more apparent to somebody than, the mental or emotional part of it, that they've been engaged in this relationship that's been so extremely erosive. And so how that manifests for people can be, different. But I think, if we're gonna, as a generality, fatigue is often the first one, so just feeling exhausted or tired. And then, there can be anxiety and insomnia. That's also another one where your sleep starts getting interrupted. aches and pains in the body, so your neck starts to hurt, your back starts to hurt. And then it just keeps progressing there because the stress cycle has so many negative consequences when you don't complete it. When you don't complete the stress cycle and you're underneath those stress hormones, they become toxic in the body. And then it can just kick off all sorts of things. So one person may, get adrenal fatigue, where another person may, get slip a disc, right? Because their body, they've been, clenched, their backs have been clenched, their necks have been clenched, for so long, all that pressure. Another person may develop a gut health issue. And that's kind of, now in sort of the more final parts of the manifestation, of how disease goes from mind and emotions and into the physical body.
So do you work like holistically? Like, do you do sort of the spiritual, the mental, the physical? Do you do it all, or?
With this particular program, we're really focused on relationships, mind and emotions, and really going right straight to the root of it. If I have women in the program, that have specific issues that I'm able to help with and further address, then I absolutely will. But that's not typically something that we talk about right at the front end. The problem that is with, toxic relationships.
So once you get that handled, then you're able to start eating healthy and doing workout. But if you're still engaging in those toxic relationships the way you always have, it doesn't matter what you eat, you're still screwed, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And so actually my focus for several years was gut health and digestive issues and acid, reflux. And so, working with so many men and women with that issue, if there wasn't exactly, you could eat and follow the diet and take all the supplements or the pharmaceuticals, whichever you want. You're not going to get anywhere if you're not also addressing the mind, emotions, relationships, and that is usually the strongest, more influential on you than your diet.
That's so interesting.
Your mental and emotional
the
health.
parallel to addiction is so amazing to me because it's the same thing. Like if you don't have your sobriety, none of that other stuff matters, and same here. It's like this emotional sobriety, sort of,
totally.
Taking care of yourself emotionally and getting emotionally sober before any of that other stuff works out.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like we keep hearing the same exact thing. You have to address your mental state before anything else is going to work. Like it's just not going to work. If you don't get out of this cortisol, if you don't get out of this, fight or flight mode, no matter what you eat or work out or do anything, it doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
So
it really doesn't.
You mentioned something in the beginning and it really intrigued me. Like, can you become toxic proof? Like, is that possible? Like,
I think so. It takes a lot of awareness, right? Awareness, presence, self-observation. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be exposed with a challenging personality, or be in a challenging situation, but it certainly can equip you to, handle it more skillfully and not, fully fall into the snares of it. You may have a family member that's not going anywhere, or you may have an ex-husband or an ex-wife who's a narcissist, with children, and that's a whole nother added level, and so you may not be able to get those people out of your life. But you can do things, to definitely take care of yourself and get it to a point where, you're handling it as healthfully as possible for you. And then not, getting in relationships in the future that are not healthy.
Yeah. You mentioned that, people can be a target for these types of, you can be a narcissist target. What do narcissists look for? Like, what's their ideal target?
Yeah. So the big one is empathy. Is empathy and how, so empathy, I've read, studies where sometimes narcissists will drop a story, early on, or manipulative personalities about their troubled childhood or something that's happened in the past, to measure how their target is going to respond to it and how much empathy they express. So empathy is the big one, loyalty, cooperation, even some leadership skills, willingness to help, agreeableness, having a high amount of agreeableness. You're not somebody necessarily that's going to, fight someone early on about you want cooperation, you want harmony, you want everyone to work together, and also tend to be very solution focused people who don't give up. When the going gets rough, they don't give up on, relationships when things get hard. And so all of those things collectively make that type of person willing to stick it out with the narcissist, no matter what, and take a lot of responsibility and have a lot of tolerance for the consequences that are being brought on by them.
So that's interesting, because what can you do then, really? Because it's almost like those are all really nice qualities to have. And it's like, you can't just fake it and be somebody else. Like, I'm never going to be a dick. I'm always going to be, I love harmony. So how what can you do? Other than, just not, you still want to be yourself, right?
Right. Well, you can respond to poor behaviors, once they become evident. You can also understand that it's not your job, and nor can you even humanly possibly save a person. Every person in a relationship, if there's a problem in a relationship, both people have to say, I have a problem. And so, and if one of them isn't doing that, you can't make that person do that. Ever. It's just not within our capacity. So you can do things like that. You can be aware when a relationship is eroding you mentally, physically, emotionally. You can do that, and you can put boundaries over yourself. And also, the other part is, to understand. Sometimes there can be this men who get targeted. Sometimes they believe, and this again is a positive quality in a way. But there's a tendency to believe always in the best in people and their intentions, and as much as I would like that to be true, sometimes it's not. There are people that are predatorial, that don't have good intentions. And so it's just being aware of that. So again, it comes back down to presence, awareness, what it is that you're taking responsibility for, what is realistic to take responsibility for, and, understanding that you matter, and if you are hurting, that means there's something wrong, period. It means something is wrong, that needs to be responded to.
I love that.
You're absolutely incredible. Just the message that you're delivering, because I think it's so important to not be responsible. And I can say that you just described basically me in every way, shape, and form. And I'm just now at 45 learning that I'm not responsible for the people I love's happiness, and I'm not responsible. And my happiness has worth too.
Yeah.
And it's the way that you worded it is just incredible, but it's so hard when you're not aware of people being bad. I hate to say it like a toddler, but I can't believe people aren't nice.
Yeah. And Lizzy, I think what I remember when you were going through your whole thing, you had a gut feeling, and you were gaslighting yourself. You're like, no, my feeling is valid. And I think that's another point. I love what you said, Monica, if you're feeling a certain way, that is valid, and look at that. Because I think what I would do with people who are exhibiting narcissistic behavior towards me, I would start denying myself. I'm oversensitive, I'm overreacting, and that was that mantra. So I think that's super important what you said, to pay attention to that feeling, something is wrong if you're feeling a certain way.
And there's another thing we haven't talked about, and you said is like someone who gives people the benefit of the doubt. Like I wear that like a badge of honor. And I can't even believe that it's like something that a manipulative person would target.
Yeah.
You can't believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in an ideal world, no one would have to deal with something like this, and sometimes I will talk about, being not overly identifying with being a victim. And sometimes, I've gotten some comments on my social media posts about that, that is victim blaming. But that's not at all what I'm saying. I'm definitely not saying that a person cannot be victimized. I mean, we shouldn't, in an ideal world, have to defend ourselves against manipulative people. That's always wrong, no matter what. Even if if you had some kind of trauma in life that predisposed you towards certain people that were hurtful, you're still the victim. That's still not okay. But there's, what can happen is that we can bleed into victim mentality, right? Yeah. And there can be some recreation from that standpoint and adopting too much, becoming a victim mentality. There's a difference between being a victim and adopting a victim mentality. So there's that key difference. But when you're recovering and taking responsibility, for as much as you possibly can, it is also in looking at the ways that you may be co-creating and participating in those relationships and how they're coming to be in your life.
That's so interesting. I remember, Lizzy, you remember my dad telling me, because I had gotten out of like a slew of just toxic relationships. And my dad's like, the common denominator is you, right? I'm like, screw you, Dad. I was like 17, so it wasn't resonating at the time.
Right.
I think it finally like hit me that I was like, I was part of it. And not only that, like once I started to say, I regret staying in the friendship. I regret I have regrets, and just owning those regrets. I started to get in the driver's seat. I was like, okay, I fucked up by being in that relationship. And
it's
I could have gotten out of it.
I always see it as like you're sitting in the beehive and the bees are stinging you and you continue to sit there. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
and then blame the bees.
And then you're blaming the bees. It's like, you got to look at your part. So that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So Monica, how can people get in touch with you too, if they need help, if they're feeling burnout from relationships or work, where is a good place to get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Instagram, so that may be a good way, or on TikTok. Both of those, they can get to me through there. I have a free masterclass that they can take if they, want more information on how they can, eliminate, break, change these cycles, these toxic pattern relationships. Otherwise they can go to my site, monicayearwood.com. So those would be the ways they can get in touch with me.
That's awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you.
Lizzy,
on Instagram, I am Monica Yearwood, right? I am Monica Yearwood.
I am Monica Yearwood.
I think I'm going to have to schedule a sesh with you and hope that you
absolutely.
I saw Lizzy's face when you were like, just because you end the relationship doesn't mean you're clear and free. And she's like,
I am going to be your client now.
Right. Thank you so much, Monica. It was awesome having you on.
Yeah,
you are absolutely
Thank you so much. Love you both. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us this week on We Need